We have a real treat tonight on our show. Up next is two-time World Series champion and childhood idol of mine and Ruvain's, Howard Johnson. HoJo joins us next on Beat the Shift. Welcome to another episode of the Beat the Shift podcast presented by Fangraphs. I am your host, Ariel Cohen, and with me as always, Ruvain Guy. How are you, Ruvain?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful, and we are delighted and honored to have on our show Howard Johnson, HoJo, no other way to say it. Howard Johnson played 14 seasons with the Tigers, Mets, Rockies, and Cubs from 82 to 95, two times World Series winner, two-time All-Star, two-time Silver Slugger. Welcome to the show, HoJo. How are you?
Very good, guys. Thanks for having me. I'm doing very well. Thanks.
Oh, pleasure to have you. This is the Fangraph show, so I have to say the career 23.5 WAR, including a 7 WAR season in 1989. Amazing. You were fantastic that year and had an amazing career. 228 homers, 231 stolen bases, 3-time member of the 30-30 club. Unbelievable.
Wow, I tell you what, my body feels it nowadays. I tell you that. Actually, this is the way I played. I just tried to play hard on every game, every inning. Didn't want to take anything for granted. Nothing. Don't take any days off if I can help it, and try to stay healthy. So it's kind of a jumble, but you just do the best you can and you just go until your body says no more.
Right. What are you up to these days? Life after baseball.
Well, I've been coaching professionally the last few years, but last year we did not because of COVID, and this year I opted out of going to Mexico, so I stayed home. My son and I own a big facility down in Nashville here, in Franklin, Tennessee, Showtime Sports Academy, and we run that place full time. We own it, and Glenn runs it. My son Glenn, he runs that thing full time. We just got done with a big all-star break camp that ended today. And Straw was actually at the camp today, so it was really cool for the kids.
Oh, wow.
Wow, that sounds great. And speaking of Strawberry, you played with him together for a number of years with the Mets. What do you think your breakthrough moment or the highlight of your career would be, either with the Mets or with any other team?
From a personal standpoint?
Yes.
Oh, I would have to say the 87 season, being how we were coming off the World Series, and they let Ray Knight go to free agency, and I think he ended up going to Baltimore. So 87, it was the year that it was my job to lose right out of spring training. And so I prepared all winter for that opportunity. And so when it finally did come, I was ready, and I responded, and I had a really good season that year, and broke some records and shocked some people along the way, and it just kind of set the tone for what I thought I could be as a player, and that's kind of for me my breakthrough season was 87.
Well, you happened to be on deck when Mookie Wilson had his infamous or famous, depending on if you're a Mets fan or not, at bat. Would he have beaten Bill Buckner to first base from your vantage point? Do you think he would have beaten him there if Bill Buckner fielded it cleanly?
Yes, I do. I believe so. I think he would have beat it because Mookie gets out of the box probably better than anybody I've ever seen, and he just has this way of getting down the line that just keeps picking up speed so fast. And I just thought he would have beaten Stanley to the bag. And at that point, it would have been HoJo up with the bases loaded, which have been fun to see.
Yeah. Yes. We are glad on the outcome, though, that Mookie got it done. Of course,
Oh, heck yeah, 100%. It's a lot more famous that way.
Yes.
Memorable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This next question comes from my father, actually. And I do owe you a little bit of a debt of gratitude. I guess indirectly you're responsible for me coming to Fangraphs and doing some work in baseball. You were my father's favorite Met. My father had two favorite players, Willie Mays, growing up, and
No
you,
way.
because of the power speed combo, and just
Wow.
absolutely loved you. So he instilled in me a love of the Mets, and you were the favorite player. So thank you so much
Well,
for that, first
that's
of all.
thank you for the compliment, and your dad as well, because that's probably the first time I've ever been in the same sentence with Willie Mays.
Wow.
You know, that's high company.
No, absolutely. His question is very interesting, and he's saying that one of the reasons he loved you is the power speed. He always said that you were the third baseman, and he loved it when you just played third baseman, and he never liked it when you played short at the end or going to the outfield.
Hmm.
He's just wondering what is your reaction to that? Did you enjoy playing the other positions, or did you really feel that third base was yours and you should have stuck there?
Well, I played a lot of shortstop um, uh, early years, so I'd had some experience over there, and I rather enjoyed it, to be honest with you. And so Davey would put me over there in '86 as a way to get an extra bat in the lineup whenever Doc or Sid pitched, seeing how that they were fly ball strikeout type pitchers, so the risk was low from his standpoint. And I I loved it. I thought I was like a vacation going to shortstop. I like being in the center of activity. Um, it got a little difficult playing the outfield. That's where
Right.
things kind of went sideways for me.
Right.
And I wish I could have mastered that, but I physically I just could not. I could not get over the hump to play that kind of center field that Shea requires. It's a big ballpark and big alleys, big gaps. And okay, so going into the alleys at Shea, they were so big. And at that point, I was 30 years old, going to be 31 that year in '91, and it just became a difficult um, transit. Actually, excuse me, start over. I was 32. I was 31, going on 32 when Jeff Torborg asked me to go to center, and I was kind of up for it. I really wanted to go for it and do it. I thought it'd be a great way to extend my career going to the outfield, but Shea being so big, um, it just gave me a lot of trouble, and I just didn't trust my instincts enough to make it work. And it was purely my call. I mean, Jeff had asked me during the off season. I'd said I'd do whatever he wants me to do for the team, and I thought that would be our best shot. So I gave the okay to do it, and I spent all spring training out there working my butt off, trying to be a competent center fielder. And just the results were okay, but I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it to the point where uh, I was good enough to be out there every day.
Right. Now, we do a lot of analytics here over at Fangraphs, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Like
sure
Yell
you.
site.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure that going through baseball in the '80s, you've had access to some kind of analytics, very different than what it is today. Can you tell us what was available to you back then and what you specifically used?
Yeah. So our scouting reports, we didn't really have um, analytics per se to the point where it is now the way it's deployed. I mean, teams just rely on it almost exclusively, and that can be a little dangerous, but that's just the way the game is at this point. We had stats, we had our stats for the guys that we're facing, and what I tried to do is from a hitter standpoint is I used to look at the pitchers and study them and see what they did their previous outing, and that kind of gave me an idea of what they wanted to change going into this outing. So I tried to get a little bit of a heads up from that. So if a guy was struggling with his command, wasn't throwing strikes, wasn't getting his breaking ball over, whatever, then I figured his next start he'd probably try to be doing those things. So maybe if his command wasn't good, he'd be trying to get ahead a lot more, earlier in the count with a fastball. He was having a hard time striking people out or putting people away. I thought maybe he would try to be more of a nimble guy to try to strike people out. Just little things like that. You just kind of get a sense of the back and forth of a baseball season, that the adjustments that players make from game to game or series to series.
Right.
And actually, after your playing career, you did some coaching. How did analytics
Yeah.
change through the course of your coaching, and what did you draw from it and teach and be able to teach other players?
Well, the biggest thing that changed from when I was a player and then going into coaching was video started to really take off. So there was a lot of good starting to get some slow motion video, um, where you could see things that previously we couldn't really see. So that was starting to become a little bit more mainstream. And at that point, it was easier to dissect, and identify some flaws that you would find in a hitter. And the analytics themselves really weren't widely used the way they are now. But stats were, use the analytics to tell stories about yourself. Like if you were a good or a bad hitter after one strike or ahead in the count or early in the count. Was it a guy that, or were you a hitter that that was better when he attacked early, or was it a guy that's had to see a lot of pitches? What kind of a hitter were you, when you were in hitters counts, home road splits, all those things before? Never really thought about. Like I never thought about a home road split, as a player when I was playing. I never thought about it once. But as a coach, you tend to look at all that stuff and try to figure out reasons why X player is doing this. Why is he trending like that the last 2 weeks when before he was swinging the bat really good? Like what's changed? Is it his habits? Is it the fact that we're traveling? Is it because we're home and he's getting a lot of extra swings? Things like that, start to come into play.
And actually, throughout your career, you had two really, really good managers that stood out in Davey Johnson and Sparky Anderson when you first came up with the Tigers. What did they bring to the game? What did you learn from them that you were able to coach with when you became a coach?
Well, I probably learned more from Davey than Sparky. Sparky was an older guy that really liked older players, veteran players. He wasn't as fond of the younger guy as Davey was. Davey was a player, so Davey played. He knows the game. He knows what it's like to be in the locker room and put on the uniform and go out there and have to perform. And I think that helps. It helped Davey to um, relate to the players, and the players related to him. So you knew that if he told you something, it was based on a lot of the time his experience, um, or he had a desire to try to find the way to use you. Where Sparky was more of a kind of an authoritarian type manager, especially with young guys. You were going to do it this way, and that was it. And you know, whenever I guess you never really knew where you stood with them. You kind of did, but you didn't really know if it was going to last long. Like if he was mad at you or for whatever, you'd know it, but you didn't know how if it would last. And Davey never really got mad at us for anything because I think he just understood players a little bit better. I guess I was a modern player at that point because I was only 24 years old, 23, 24 years old. So I was young. I was more of a National League style player. That's probably why it fits so well with the Mets.
Right, right, right. Which former teammate were you closest with back then, and who are you closest with now?
Wow, that's a good one. Well, probably now. I mean, I'm probably close. I'm really close with Bobby Ujeda. Um, close with Straw. I see Straw, periodically. Like he was just here. He's left today.
Right.
We've talked on the phone several times, and it's been awesome, to talk to Straw because he's changing lives now. He's not the same guy he was back then. Bobby O, I love Bobby O. We just got back from a vacation a couple weeks ago out in Montana with our wives fishing, and so it's fun to be able to share some time like that with these guys. Wally Backman was my card partner, so whenever we played cards on the plane and it was a team game, he was my partner. So he and I seemed to hook up on everything. And of course, there was Keith Miller that came along later, and he's one of my best buddies too.
Wow. And actually, to try to bring it a little more to the current times, 10 years ago, you actually played a handful of games with an independent league, the
Hmm.
Rockland Boulders. I actually live a couple blocks from where they play. What was that about? Were you just trying to see if you still had it at the age of 50?
No, well, my son was playing for that team, and I was out of the baseball at that point. I wasn't coaching. I had just got let go from the Mets, and um, I was kind of in a situation where I just I needed to take a break from baseball, and so I wasn't doing much. And Glenn was out playing independent ball with the Rockland team, and their GM called me. Thought it'd be a cool idea if I suited up for a couple ball games and played was in the lineup with my son. I thought it was cool as heck. So I thought, yeah, I'll go ahead. I'll get myself in shape as best I can and go from there and see what happens. Let's do it. So I mean, I wasn't ready. That was the last. Those are the last time that I had my knees. I had them replaced like a month later. They were so bad.
Wow.
I had a hard time moving around, and I mean, I was in a lot of pain. Playing. I wish I had them done earlier, but um, it was a blast because my son and I shared a few days there where we're trying to work out, get dad in shape again, and I was just having a hard time getting my body to respond. But they didn't strike me out. I did the best I could, and my first at bat I hit a fly ball in a deep right field that back in the day that would have been a HoJo homer for sure, but ended up being a little pop fly to right field. So that was literally my last hurrah.
Right. On to our mailbag here. A lot of questions and comments from our listeners here, and
Awesome.
and yeah, and speaking of family, first JD asks straight away, how is your family doing, and how can people help your grandson Tanner? Maybe you can talk a little bit about that and what we're collecting for.
Yes. So as many of you guys know, my grandson, my youngest grandson Tanner, was in a horrific accident about a week and a half ago, where he was backed up over. My son was on his mower, and Tanner had run up behind him, and Glenn did not see him, and there was an area of the yard where Glenn was going in reverse and ran over Tanner's body basically, and his left foot got tore up pretty good in the blades. He lost all five toes and a good portion, not a good portion, but another section of his foot. So he's going to be okay. The doctors they sent him home today. He's had three surgeries, and he's recovering. I mean, as best as you can right now as almost a 2-year old. So it's been difficult for the family to go through this because everybody wants to blame themselves, for what happened, but it's not. It's seriously, it's nobody's fault. It was a pure accident. So many things had to happen that for this to happen that it's just bizarre. And nobody was being careless or anything. It wasn't playing around or nothing. It was just a 2-year-old boy seeing his dad on the out in the yard doing the yard and going outside and running up to the mower. Not Glenn did not see him. He was behind him. So it was just one of those terrible accidents, and we're raising money for them because they're not wealthy. They do good, but they're okay. But this is going to take a lot. Um, it's beyond what um, they're able to do on their own without help. So that's why we set up the GoFundMe page, um, to try to raise money for the family and for Tanner, so that he can get the treatment and the prosthetics, the physical therapy, whatever it takes to get this little kid back to being himself. And this is all this kid did was wanted to play baseball. He's almost 2. He would sit and watch baseball on TV. He'd pick up a broom handle if there one was around and start swinging it and acting like he's a hitter on. He'd see something on television and try to copy it. He'd go to travel baseball games, see pitchers on the mound, and he started picking up his leg and like a pitcher and throwing, and then he'd get down like a catcher, wanting you to throw the ball back to him. It was so funny, so cute, But that's all the kid wanted to do is play baseball, and he'll do it for hours by himself, hit balls off the tee, and it's sad that he's going to be impacted by this, but God is good, and He's working through His people, that because they've been very generous and have found in their hearts, to help, because I don't think any 2-year-old should have to go through something like this.
Yeah, no, and thank you for posting all the video updates. I've tweeted out the GoFundMe page, but we'll also put a link to it on the Fangraphs page
yes.
to this podcast. So yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
Thank you.
No, I absolutely. A couple of other questions here.
Yeah.
Paul asks, why are there so few members of the 30-30 Club? How do you think you would fare in today's game?
I don't know. There's not a lot of members of 30-30 because to steal 30 bases, you have to be determined to do so. It's a very difficult thing to do, to have that to be big enough to be able to hit 30 homers and then light enough to be able to steal 30 bases. And, catchers know you're running, pitchers know you're running. So they're game planning it, and it's difficult, and you have to really work at it, like you work on your hitting. You have to study pitchers, you have to work on your jumps, you have to do all those things to be successful. And when I was a kid, I was always ran. I was always a runner. I like to, try to sprint. I'm not a fast guy, but I was powerful, and so my goal was always to be successful every time I tried to steal. And so stealing a base was great. I didn't want to get thrown out, so I always wanted a high percentage. And if I couldn't get the high percentage, I wasn't going to go. There's a lot of guys that can steal bases, but they get thrown out as much as they get that they're safe, and that's not even right. Don't even go. Just stay on first base. Do yourself a favor. Do the team a favor. Don't run. If you can't steal it and be successful, 75, 80%, don't do it. And also the physical toll that it takes on your body to run like that, the attempts you have to make, um, in and of itself are pretty high. So there's a lot that goes into it. I think I'd fare pretty good at today's game. I was a good fastball hitter. And it seems like pitchers now are gaining more velocity, and they're not afraid to show it off, and I'm good with that.
Yeah.
I say bring it on,
Yeah, yeah, that's it. No, definitely. And you're right. The analytics have shown that, if you're stealing 75, 80%, then it makes sense to, and if not, then you shouldn't be doing it, which is probably why steals have gone down. I have a comment here from Alan. He's a Tigers fan. He's remembering what he says the Dave Bergman home run game in '84. You guys started with 35-5, the Tigers, that year. You were down 3-0 in the bottom of the ninth. And tell me if this is right, but you came on as a pinch hitter, came down to 2 strikes. You had a long foul ball that just missed being a homer, and the very next pitch you hit a 3-run homer to tie the game. And later in extra innings, Dave Bergman fouls off about 10 pitches, 13 pitch at bat, hits a 3-run homer to win that. You remember that game?
I do remember that game. I think it was against the Blue Jays. That
Aha.
was our big rival. That was our big rival, and um, yeah, there was some games against Toronto that were kind of epic matchups, and yeah, I remember some games against those guys where I homered, but the Bergman homer was a that's kind of a Tigers folklore. You know, it was like a 15 or 16 pitch at bat,
Yeah.
and he finally drilled it. So, and Bergie died a few years ago of
Right.
cancer. Um, great man, good family man, and he's. I'm glad that he's remembered for things like that because he was a solid person.
Yeah. I have an interesting comment here from Michael, and he says that um, in Hebrew, follow this one. In Hebrew, if you take the letters and you add their numerical equivalent, so like in English, A would be 1 and B would be 2 and C would be 3, etc., etc. If you do it
Okay,
in Hebrew, HoJo adds up to 20.
come on,
I'm not kidding you
serious?
here. That's the
Oh my
comment here.
gosh!
Wow.
Now I've never heard that before, and I'm gonna have to repeat that one.
Yeah, yeah, in Hebrew, Hojo adds up to 20. That is absolutely incredible.
And in
I like
in
it.
1991, you actually changed to number 44. Why did that happen?
Yes, I changed to 44 for Daryl for Straw. He got traded. I think it was that week, um, and we were on the West Coast playing. And I told Charlie, our equipment guy, I said, "Hey, I said, Charlie, how hard would it be to switch me to 44 for a little bit?" And he accommodated it, and I wore it for about a week. And I think a couple of the guys might have wore it after me. Dave Cohn, I think, wore it. But yeah, we're just doing like a little bit personal tribute for him.
And actually now Pete Alonso wears number 20, and he wore 44, and he won the home run derby
Yep,
the other night. So
I
there you
know. How
go.
about that, right? That's cool. That's very cool.
Yeah.
What a
uh,
hitter that guy is.
Unbelievable. Two home run derbies. You think he'll come back and win the third one in a row?
Well, I tell you what, he's making more money winning home run derbies than he is playing the game.
Yeah. So far, he is.
Were you
Um,
ever asked? Were you ever asked to be in the home run derby?
Oh yeah, I was in two. I was in two All Star games,
right.
and I was in two home run derbies. And the first one in '89 in Anaheim, they did a little bit differently back then. It was the AL versus the NL, and so the NL team was me, Kevin Mitchell, might have been Sandberg or somebody, Dawson, I don't remember, all of them, but
Right.
that's the way we used to do it, and we beat the AL. And then in '91, I was in Toronto, and I was in the home run derby, and that's the year that Ripken hit like a ton. And my BP, I was killing it in BP. Sammy Perlaza was throwing to me. We joked about it after the fact, but he was grooving it, and I was just launching. And I'm thinking, oh man, I got a shot at this thing. But I must have worn myself out because I couldn't get a ball to the ballpark. I must have hit like two or three balls off the wall that just a little bit underneath that would have been homers, and just never could get it back. I don't know if I got tired or what. My wife was in the stands. She was like due any day with our last child, Kayla, my youngest daughter. She was due any day for that. The doctors had to give her permission to fly, and so I think that was part of it. Just the stress of that. I just didn't feel like I was myself, mentally or physically. That the All Star game and that home run derby, but it was a lot of fun. I love doing those things. I'm just not the biggest guy in the world, so I'm not the biggest guy in the world. There's guys that are much bigger than I am, and you know, I just I just didn't have enough to compete with some of those other guys. But I remember going into the '91 All Star game, leading baseball. Man, I could have been. I know I was leading the National League in home runs and RBIs at that time. I think I had 18 and 63. And I think that was the high water mark for maybe for both leagues, but definitely at the National League.
Yep. And you finished 91, leading the baseball in homers with 38 and RBIs
38.
117.
117. I hit number 117 was a line drive to right off of Bruce Ruffin in Philadelphia late, and Keith Miller scored, and that was the one that I needed because Barry Bonds was right behind me and Will Clark was right behind me, and neither one of those two guys drove runs in the last day, and I was able to get that last one at the end of the game, and that was it.
Yeah, no, that must have been exciting for you. Trying to keep pace with Bonds and everybody. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. You look back, you think, oh man, because like Straw and I were talking today with these kids, we were telling them about great players that we've seen over our careers, and Barry Bonds to me was probably one of the best players I've ever seen. A lot of people would agree that he might be the best player that ever played. And didn't need steroids. He didn't need that. He was good before. And just to be kind of like, battling it out with him for that kind of stuff is cool. Will Clark, same guy, same type of person, man. Just a really solid baseball player, great swing. Just a lot of good memories facing those guys. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Howard, it's been a real pleasure and honor to having you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
You got it, Ariel. My pleasure, guys. Ruvan, nice to talk to y'all, okay?
Thank you so much. All right, we'll be back next week with another episode of Beat the Shift podcast presented by Fangraphs. Once again, thank you to Howard Johnson for joining the show. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Beat the Shift podcast presented by Fangraphs. Follow us on Twitter at beat_shift_pod.